Mahalo to the following sponsors: Haiku Helen, psychic extraordinaire and internet promoter, haikuhelen.com, and The Salon in Paia, where beauty meets the beach, hairstyling, and much more. Welcome to Life on Maui. My name is Stephen Freid. My guest for today is Jacob Liberman, author of the bestseller Take Off Your Glasses and See, and more recently, Wisdom from an Empty Mind. Much of his life is devoted to vision in the larger sense. Welcome to the show, Jacob.
It's nice to be here. Good to see you.
Good to see you, yeah. So, what prompted you to write Take Off Your Glasses and See?
You know, I was classically trained as an optometrist and spent many of my years working as a vision scientist as well.
What's a vision scientist?
Well, it's not a clinician. It's someone that is using research and so on to take a look at aspects of science that have to do with the functioning of vision. So it's not just examining the eyes, looking at prescriptions, training vision, and so on, but it's looking at other phenomena that play a role in the process of vision, looking a lot, for instance, at neurophysiological functioning of the eye. So looking at the brain as well as the eyes, because the eyes are actually not separate from the brain. They're frontal extensions of the brain. So if you looked at the brain, it has two frontal satellite dishes, which are your direct connection with the world. 90% of everything that we take in during our lifetime occurs by way of the eyes. So the eyes are very profoundly and inseparably connected from everything we do. It is the navigational system of the body, so every move you make as a human being is guided by your vision. So the understanding of vision is really a key piece in terms of understanding the behavior of the person, the nature of the person, the mental makeup, the intelligence of the person, and even looking at their consciousness. Because what we're really talking about is what it truly means to see. And you know that when people say, I see, it means I understand. So most people think that vision is something related to eyesight. But vision is inseparably connected to consciousness. So right now we're paying attention to each other. How do we know that? Because we're looking at each other. So the act of aiming the eyes, which occurs effortlessly, is actually the foundation of presence. That's why all the meditative practices have you focus on something. What the average person doesn't recognize is that whether the eyes are opened or the eyes are closed, when you're focusing on something, the eyes literally focus in the same way, both ways. So aiming of the eyes sets a situation where we can be present and attentive with the other. When the eyes are aimed, they're automatically focused. And so focusing has to do with understanding. That's why I said, I see means I understand. We say the only constant is change. The world is always moving. And so the eyes are in continual state of movement with the world. You could say that as the world moves, the eyes are continuously changing so that we can continuously be present with whatever is happening in each moment. And then you've got two eyes rather than one. So both of them are teaming on a continual level, and that gives us each a slightly different perspective, if you will, and that's what allows us to have three-dimensional vision. What's interesting about the teaming of the eyes is that it doesn't only give you three-dimensional vision, but it allows you to separate foreground from background. In other words, it's the body's prioritization system. It lets you immediately know what is calling to you. And that's a very, very important aspect that we'll get into,
Yeah.
because we need to start differentiating what's the difference between looking and seeing. So a lot of my work had to do initially with working with patients, teaching children, adults, athletes, and so on, how to begin to recognize how their vision works so that they could use their vision to their maximum potential as human beings.
Well, something happened with you personally that predicated all this. Something
yeah.
with your own vision.
My own vision, yeah. I was a kid with a reading problem. I really didn't read as a child. It was difficult for me. I started reading and I'd fall asleep in a couple of minutes. And so school was difficult for me. I had excellent eyesight. The eye doctor said, oh, there's nothing wrong with this child's eyes. But getting through school was very, very difficult. When I entered college, within 10 days, I lost my eyesight. I was in the middle of a test. I looked up at the blackboard. The whole blackboard was blurry. It took a few minutes for it to clear up. I immediately went to the infirmary to go to the eye doctor to make sure I didn't have some sort of disease. And they said, oh, you're nearsighted, and they gave me glasses. Soon I found I couldn't see without the glasses. It was almost like I became addicted to the glasses.
I completely
You understand this?
Well, I remember that experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you first get the glasses, it makes things, it's not only clear, it makes things feel different. And so I remember going back to the doctor and saying, you know, I can see clearly, but something doesn't feel right. To which he said, don't worry, you'll get used to it.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is you do get used to it. Your eyes keep deteriorating every 6 months or so after you get the glasses. What I noticed is my reading problem didn't change. So when I went into my optometric training, I barely got through the first 2 years. I mean, I really thought that I was going to be thrown out. When I entered my third year, which was the clinical part of my work, the first thing they did was examine you. And when they examine you, the student doctor said you need a new prescription, but your eyes are not working together well. And so, to make a long story short, I did some vision exercises that changed my whole life. And after doing these vision exercises, I went from a C student to being a Dean's Lit student almost every quarter until I graduated. And so when I went into practice...
This is enormous.
Yeah, it was a very profound experience for me.
Yeah.
When I went into practice in 1973, that was the focus of my work. I wanted to work with kids who had the same experience that I did. Kids that were bright, but couldn't do well in school and thought that there was something wrong with them because of that. And so that's what I did. I worked with thousands of children that were diagnosed with learning problems or brain difficulties, just couldn't get by in school. That's what I did for several years. In 1975, I was wearing probably my 9th pair of glasses at the time.
Oh.
And I couldn't see without my glasses. I could barely see the big E on the chart, which meant that I was legally blind without my glasses. I need to wear them in order to work, in order to play, in order to drive, and so on. In fact, my driver's license said I had to have the glasses in order to see.
Yeah.
So I said, you know, I wonder if I can do some of these same vision exercises to improve my own eyesight. And so what I did is, rather than continually increasing my prescription, I started exercising my eyes and simultaneously kept reducing the prescription just a little bit at a time. Within about 8 or 9 months, I got out of glasses, but what precipitated getting out of glasses wasn't just the exercising that I did. One Sunday, I was meditating at home, which is something that I had started doing in 1971. And while I was in this state of meditation with my eyes closed, something happened that had never happened before. My eyes were closed, but I had a sense that I was observing myself in the room meditating. Now today we would say that was an out-of-body experience, but this is 1976. I'd never had an experience like this. I'd never read about an experience like this. I had no idea what was going on. What was interesting is that even though my eyes were closed, everything in the room was crystal clear. Not only crystal clear optically, but crystal clear in terms of I was almost in a state of awe, like everything was clear, I had no questions.
I just want to understand something. Are you saying that your eyes were closed, but you were seeing in the room?
Yes, my eyes were closed, but I guess through the mind's eye or some way, I could see exactly where I was sitting in the room. And I could see it with perfect optical clarity, but there was another sense of clarity that I had. When I say that things were clear, there was a period there were no questions. Everything was clear. I don't know how to describe it beyond that. The other facet that was really fascinating for me is I couldn't tell from where I was seeing. It felt as though I was simultaneously perceiving myself from the front, from the back, from the sides, and from the top at the same time. Now, I don't know how to describe that. Today they would call it holographic seeing.
Yeah.
But at the time, I'd never heard of this term. I'd never had this experience. And when I came out of it and someone said, well, what did it feel like? I said, I felt as though I'd become the sky.